Hi, my name is Janelle Ramos, and today I am analyzing good romantic relationship advice versus bad romantic relationship advice in connecting to John Gottman's research on relationships. I have my computer set over here with all my notes on it. I hope that's okay. When I think of a good example of romantic relationship, it's a really common phrase where communication is key. Communicate openly and conflict respectfully instead of avoiding it. Now, I believe that this is a good advice because it encourages healthy communication. I've been in a relationship for 2 years, and communication is genuinely key. And it's a very overused, common phrase when people talk about relationships, but it's true. You are always going to be in communication with your partner, and that means that learning how to communicate properly is a really big part of working through relationship problems. I believe that this is good advice because it encourages healthy communication, open conversation to understanding instead of resentment, and helps couples work through problems before they grow. And to me, that means learning how to communicate properly. And that's going to be different for all kinds of relationships. You are going to set boundaries how you see fit. So each individual couple will decide how communication works for them. Now, this advice connects to the John Gottman's research because he found that how a couple fight matters more than how often they fight. You're gonna fight all the time in relationships, and simply fighting, say you fight every single day, you have a conflict every single day, that doesn't mean that your relationship isn't healthy. You fight once a week or you fight once a month. That doesn't mean your relationship is more healthy than those who fight every other day. And that simply is just the end of the discussion because you're trying to understand a whole other person. I've been in a relationship for 2 years, and I understand what it means to fight or have an argument, and understand that how we communicate during those fights matters much more than people expect. And to me, that means like having a conversation and having it resolved quietly, easily, understandably is much more comforting than the beginning, like what started the argument. Now, John Gottman said healthy couples use gentle startups, which means easing into a conversation rather than bringing it out of the blue. Listen and responding respectfully, and they repair conversations after the conflict has occurred. He said this advice helps couples avoid the 4 horsemen, which are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And I agree with John Gottman says successful couples aren't conflict-free. And like I said, you are working with someone who is entirely different than you. So if you never fight, that isn't more healthy than someone who doesn't. It's actually more than likely less healthy. And this takes me to my prime example of bad advice. My prime example of bad advice would be the term, if you love someone, it should be easy. I grew up with a mother who constantly told me if my relationship was not easy to uphold, then it was not true relationships. However, I strongly disagree with this. Relationships are hard. You are trying to be a part of someone who has a mind of their own opinions, and their own way of doing things, all of which can disrupt how you do things. And basically, in saying that, it's like a lot of couples don't have the same values, don't have the same morals, don't have the same political views, and don't like, even something as small as you don't have the same music taste. You are trying to love someone who in one way or another is entirely different than you. That is going to cause conflicts, when regarding it as holding it in just causes resentment, all of which can disrupt how you do things. Now, this is bad advice because it states unrealistic expectations and encourages people to avoid conflict, and that can lead to suppressed emotions and resentments. I had a friend who was like, me and my boyfriend never argue, we never fight, we never disagree. And then she would come to me later and she would tell me, oh, I hate when he does this, I hate when he speaks to me this way, I hate when he leaves and he doesn't text me. And well, that's causing resentment. You hate these things about him, yet you are not giving him the availability to correct those things, to work on it with you. You're not setting boundaries, you're not communicating, and all of that makes your relationship so much more difficult because it just stays with you in that bubbles, and then that's not fair to your partner who doesn't even get the chance to work on it. And it also gives him the right to say like, well, you never told me that. Now, John Gottman shows that conflict is normal and unavoidable, and avoiding these conflicts often leads to stonewalling. Avoiding conflicts do not make a relationship stronger, and this advice can actually increase emotional distance instead of closeness. Keeping these things to yourself, these problems, these feelings, it's going to make you feel like you can never talk to them. And a lot of these times, like, that's not even something the other partner wants. And telling people that, oh, if you're in a relationship and you love them and they love you, it should be easy, you should never argue. And that's just entirely wrong. Being with someone, regardless of how much you love them, is incredibly difficult. I've been with my boyfriend 2 years, and I can say like I love him with the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of my heart to the tip of my toes to the end of the earth. And that, boy, does that man make me mad, you know, like. And I have never been more grateful that in this relationship I can tell him what's bothering me. I can tell him how he makes me mad, and I can expect for these things to be fixed, and he can expect those things of me as well. Overall, good relationship advice aligned with the research of John Gottman shows and talks about healthy communication and conflict management. And bad advice often prompts unrealistic expectations that ignore how relationships actually work. John Gottman's research helps couples understand how strong relationships are built on respect, communication, and the stability to work through together. And while reading these things and while reading his research, I understand that in my relationship, I can still grow and I can still learn things from him and how to go about my relationship, and not even just in communication skills and many other things. And that's very important for relationships, because I've been with my boyfriend 2 years, and other couples have been with their significant others, their spouses, whoever, for over 20. And I can promise you, if I go and I talk to my parents about it, they'll tell you every day is a new day and every other day is a new conflict. And you still have to learn to work through those. Couples who have been together 40 years, they still don't live every day without an argument, you know? And at the end of it, communication is key. It shows how you talk to somebody, how you respect, and how you resolve. And that really shows like how strong your relationship can be. Thank you.